Percent. Percent means part of 100. We are going to use Dr. Pepper as a shortcut to help us change from a decimal to a percent or a percent to a decimal. Dr. Pepper is sometimes referred to as DP, so that's what we're going to use as DP. In this case, D is going to stand for decimal, and P is going to be our percent. When we're given a decimal, there's a quick way to change it to a percent. I'm going to look at my DP. Remember, D means decimal, P means percent. If I am going to go from a decimal to a percent, I'm going to go from my D to my P. That means I'm moving to the right. And I'm going to move 2 spaces. And what reminds me of the 2 is there is 2 letters in DP. So decimal to percent is going to go 2 to the right. And we're going to remember that because there are 2 letters in the word DP. So when we're given a decimal and they want us to move it to a percent, we're actually going to be moving the decimal point 2 places in the direction that we're moving. And since we're moving from decimal to percent, we are moving to the right. So some examples. I'm going to write DP as my reminder. We are starting with a decimal. This is decimal 7, 8, 9. Since I'm moving from a decimal and I'm trying to get a percent, I'm moving to the right. This is my percent sign. I always remember my percent is out of 100 because the symbol, the slash looks like a 1 and the 2 zeros looks like a 0. I know it doesn't look like 100, but for some reason it's always reminded me that a percent's out of 100. Okay, so remember, back to our DP, we're going to go to the right because we're going from decimal to percent, and we're going to go over 2 because there are 2 letters. Start at your decimal and move 1, 2. It makes my percent 78.9%. For 0.62, I'm moving from my decimal to percent. I'm moving to the right 2 places. 1, 2 makes this 62%. The last one is 0.2548. I'm moving from a decimal to a percent, so I'm moving 1, 2 to the right. My number is 25.48%. Now, if I'm moving the other direction from a percent to a decimal, I'm still going to leave my DP the same because we don't ever refer to Dr. Pepper as Pepper Doctor. We're always going to keep it DP. But if we're going to start with a percent and change to a decimal, this time we're going to go 2 to the left because I'm going to be given a percent and I need to move to a decimal. So that reminds me I'm looking from right to left. 2 letters, I'm going to move 2 to the left. My 2 letters reminds me of how many, and I'm actually going to be moving the decimal point to the left. So let's try a couple. These should not be over here. Okay, so we're starting with a percent. We can tell it's a percent because there's a percent sign. Even though it has a decimal in it, it's still a percent because of the percent sign. I'm going to write down my DP so that I remember. And this time I'm going from percent to decimal. So now I'm going to the left. I'm going to start at my decimal and move left 1, 2. Rewrite, my decimal is 3, 4, 5, 6. 123.4% from a percent to a decimal. Go left, 1, 2. It's 1.234. 28%, we don't see a decimal, but it's right behind the 8. So I'm going to move it 1, 2.28. We're going to have you try some. Let's start with the first one. It says we are going from a percent to a decimal. So I'm going to write DP. They're giving me a percent. I need to make a decimal out of it, so I'm going to the left. Go ahead and try A on your own. Pause the video and come back and check back with me. Okay, A says 79%. I don't see a decimal, but it's to the right of the 9. I'm going to move it to the left, 1, 2, 79.79. 4%, go ahead and try it on your own. Okay, 4% decimal is to the right of the 4. Left, 1, 2, decimal 4, but I've got this space in here. Well, remember what you know about decimals. That 4 needs to stay in the hundredths place because 4% is out of 100. To keep the 4 in the hundredths place, I need to put a 0 so that it does not move over to the tenths. Go ahead and try C on your own. Pause the video and come back and check with me. Again, we don't see a decimal point. It's on the right of the 5, so I'm going to move to the left. 1, 2, 1.35. Try D on your own. Come back and check. The decimal is again on the right hand side of the 0, so 1, 2, this should be 5.60. Number 2 says right as a percent. Well, this time DP, I'm given a decimal going to a percent, so I'm going to go to the right. I'm going to do all of these. If you'll just pause the video, try all 4, come back and check with me. Okay, so you should have done all 4. Start with the 0.06. I'm moving 2 to the right. This just is 6%. I don't need to keep the 0, and I do not need to show the decimal because it's to the right. There's no other numbers following. Number 2 is 0.2. I'm going to move it 1, 2 to the right. We have that same problem. We're supposed to have a number right here. Well, you have to think 0.2 is 2 tenths, but we said a percent is out of 100. So what can I do to make that in the hundredths place? It's not 2 hundredths, it's 20%. C, I'm going to start at the decimal and move 1, 2, that's 210%. And start at the decimal, 1, 2, this is 1%.